Have you ever waited for the perfect day? You tell yourself, I will start tomorrow. Tomorrow becomes next week. Next week becomes next month. Then one day you look back and realize that years have passed, but your dream is still only a dream. Many people are not failing because they are weak. They are failing because they never begin. Some people want to start a business, but they think they need more money. Some want to learn a new skill, but they think they need more time. Some want to make videos, write books, lose weight, or change their life, but they keep waiting for the perfect moment. The truth is, the perfect moment never comes. Fear wears many different faces. Sometimes it looks like overthinking. Sometimes it looks like laziness. Sometimes it looks like preparing forever. But deep inside, it is only one thing: the fear of taking the first step. Today, I want to tell you a story that happened many years ago. A story about a young man who had nothing. No special talent, no great teacher, no powerful family. Only one small decision. A decision to start, no matter how. Hello everyone, my name is Ayan, and welcome back to our channel, where we learn English through powerful motivational stories that also teach us valuable life lessons. Today's story may look simple in the beginning, but by the end, it might completely change the way you think about your dreams. So, let's begin. Many years ago, in a quiet village surrounded by hills, lived a young man named Luke. Luke was known as a dreamer. Every evening he would sit near a large tree and watch merchants travel through the village with beautiful horses, colorful clothes, and wagons full of goods. He wanted a better life. He wanted to become successful. He wanted people to remember his name. But every day ended the same way. He only dreamed. One afternoon, an old traveler stopped near the tree where Luke was sitting. The old man smiled and asked, "Young man, why do you sit here every day?" Luke answered honestly, "I am waiting for the right chance to change my life." The old traveler looked around. "I don't see any chance coming." Luke sighed. "Exactly." The old man laughed softly. "That is because chances rarely walk toward people who are standing still." Before leaving, he gave Luke a tiny wooden seed box. "There is only one seed inside. Plant it." Luke looked inside. Only one seed. He felt disappointed. What can one seed possibly do? The traveler smiled. "You will understand later." The next morning, Luke walked to an empty field. He looked at the hard ground. This land is dry. He almost turned back. Then he remembered the traveler's words. Without thinking too much, he dug a small hole and planted the seed. Nothing happened. The next day, still nothing. After 1 week, nothing. His neighbors laughed. "You wasted your time." Luke started doubting himself. Maybe they are right, he thought. Maybe I am a fool for believing an old man's words. He stopped visiting the field. 10 days passed. Then 15. Luke told himself the story was over. A strange old man, a strange seed, a strange promise. Nothing more. But one evening, walking home a different way, he passed near the empty field without meaning to. He almost didn't look. Almost. Then something small stopped him. A tiny green line, thin as a thread, pushing up through the dry soil. Luke stood still. He knelt down slowly, afraid that if he breathed too hard, it would disappear. It did not disappear. It was real. His hands were shaking, though he could not explain why. It was only a sprout, smaller than his smallest finger, but it was alive. And it had been alive this whole time, underground, in the dark, while he believed nothing was happening at all. That night, Luke could not sleep. He kept thinking about the 15 days he almost gave up. 15 days he spent believing his effort meant nothing. He did not know that the ground was already working. He did not know that roots were already reaching deeper, searching for water, holding on in the dark, long before anything showed on the surface. The next morning, Luke returned to the field before the sun was fully up. He brought water in an old clay jar. His neighbors saw him and laughed again. One seed. Still? Luke did not argue this time. He simply knelt down and gave the small green sprout the water it needed. Every morning after that, he came back. Some mornings it rained, and the sprout looked stronger. Some mornings the sun was harsh, and the leaves looked tired and thin, curling slightly at the edges. There was one particularly difficult week when a hard wind came through the village. and bent the small stem almost to the ground. Luke found it lying sideways in the mud. For a moment, his heart sank. "It's finished," he whispered. But when he looked closer, the stem was bent, not broken. He gently pushed a small stick into the ground beside it and tied the stem to it with a thin strip of cloth, loosely, just enough to hold it steady. "I'm not letting you fall," he said quietly, more to himself than to the plant. Slowly, over the following days, the stem straightened again on its own. It grew a little stronger than before, as if the wind had tested it, and it had decided to hold on. Luke noticed something strange in the days after the storm. The part of the stem that had bent, then healed, grew thicker than the rest, stronger, in exactly the place it had almost broken. He did not have a word for that back then. He was only a young man in a quiet village, kneeling beside a small plant. But years later, when he told this story to his own children, he would pause here and say, "Sometimes the place where you almost broke becomes the strongest part of you, not despite the struggle. Because of it." There were other hard days too, days Luke never talked about later. One morning, he found small insects crawling along the leaves, eating tiny holes into the green surface. He did not know what to do. He sat beside the plant for a long time, simply watching, the way a worried parent watches a sick child. Then he remembered something his grandmother once did in her own small garden. She used to crush certain bitter leaves and mix them with water. Luke tried it, unsure if it would work. He came back the next morning almost afraid to look. The insects were gone. It was such a small victory. No one in the village even knew it had happened. There was no applause, no audience. Only Luke the plant, and one quiet morning. But Luke felt something shift inside him that day. He realized that solving one small problem, one nobody would ever see, mattered just as much as planting the seed in the first place. Maybe more, because it proved something to him. Problems were not signs to stop. They were simply part of growing anything worth growing. Weeks turned into months. The single sprout became a small green stalk. The stalk grew taller than Luke's knee, then his waist, then his chest. There were setbacks even in this later stage. A dry spell came that lasted nearly 2 weeks, and Luke had to walk further and further each day to bring enough water from the stream. His arms ached. His shoulders burned under the weight of the clay jars. More than once, he thought about resting for just one day. But he remembered the 15 days when he almost gave up completely, and he kept walking. The villagers who once laughed began to stop and look. Is that still the same plant? By the end of that season, where there had been one small, doubtful seed, there now stood a tall plant, heavy with new seeds of its own. Dozens of them, held inside golden pods that caught the evening light. Word spread quickly through the small village. Children ran ahead of their parents, just to see it with their own eyes. Old women who had watched Luke sit under the tree for years, doing nothing but dreaming, now stood quietly in front of the same field, unsure of what to say. One of the men who had laughed the loudest all those months ago walked up slowly and touched one of the golden pods with his rough fingers. "One seed did this?" he asked, almost to himself. Luke nodded. "One seed." And every morning after, the man looked at him for a long moment, then looked back at the field. "I have 3 seeds like that sitting in a jar at home," he admitted quietly. "I never planted them. I was waiting for better soil." Luke smiled, gently, without any pride in it. "There is no such thing as better soil," he said. "There is only soil, and whether or not you begin." Luke stood in front of the field, and for the first time, he understood. The old traveler had not given him a seed that would instantly change his life. He had given him a chance to begin. The rest, the water, the mornings, the storm, the patience, that part had always belonged to Luke. The following spring, Luke did not wait for another traveler to hand him anything. He took the new seeds from that single plant, and instead of keeping them for himself, he planted them across the dry field, row after row. His neighbors, the same ones who once laughed at him, came to ask if he needed help. He said yes. Not because he needed their hands, though he did, but because he remembered what it felt like to stand alone, in front of something that looked impossible, with only one small seed of belief. He did not want anyone else in the village to feel that alone again. Years later, that same dry, forgotten field was known as the greenest land in the entire region. Travelers passing through would stop just to see it, the way Luke once stopped to watch them. And sometimes, in the evenings, Luke would sit near that same large tree where he used to only dream. Except now, he was not waiting. He was resting, after a full day of work he had chosen for himself. If a young dreamer ever sat down beside him, watching the field the way he once watched the merchants pass by, Luke would smile and say the same words the old traveler once told him. Chances rarely walk toward people who are standing still. Friends, this story is not really about farming, and it is not really about a seed. It is about the 15 days. The 15 days when nothing seemed to be happening. The 15 days when it felt easier to believe it was all a mistake than to believe that something was quietly growing where no one could see it. Maybe you already planted your seed. Maybe it is a business you started quietly, a skill you began learning at night, after everyone else was asleep, a new habit, a small video, a single page of a book you told yourself you would finish one day. And maybe, right now, it feels like nothing is happening. Maybe people around you have already started to laugh, gently or not so gently, the way Luke's neighbors did. Before you decide the story is over, remember this. Roots grow first, always in the dark, always before anyone can see them. Your biggest mistake was never the days it felt like failure. Your biggest mistake would only be walking away, right before the first green line breaks through the surface. So here is a small question for you to sit with. The same way Luke once sat under that tree. What is the one seed you have been carrying? The one you have not planted yet, because you are still waiting for the perfect day. You do not need a perfect day. You only need today. You do not even need to know how the whole field will look one day. Luke did not know, when he dug that first small hole with his bare hands, that years later travelers would stop just to see what grew there. He only knew one thing. The seed had to go in the ground, or nothing would ever begin. That is all today asks of you too. Not the whole field, not certainty, not a guarantee that people will stop laughing. Just the seed, just the hole in the ground, just one small, ordinary, quiet beginning. If this story reached something inside you, stay a little longer with us. We have more stories like this one, waiting to be told. And if you are watching from far away, in a language that is not your first, know that every word you understood today is also a small seed. Keep watering it. I will see you in the next story.